Today, let's talk about adding objects from nothing, navigating a cluttered viewport once you have too many objects, and managing your collections, creating collections, and things about your outliner, which is where all your objects are going to be in. Let's delete everything. Let's bring in objects with Shift A. You can add a plane. You can add a cube. Let's move that up. You can add a circle. You can add a sphere. Also, another kind of sphere. Cylinder. Cone. Torus. Yeah, this is an infamous one for the donut guys out there. And you can add a monkey head. Say we have, just way too many objects here. Okay. So let's say we have a lot of objects in the viewport and it's really getting crowded, right? And we don't know what to do with all this stuff. Well, there's a great way to focus on one object. Let's say if you're getting lost and you just want to focus on one object, your numpad period key is to frame selected. For me, I remapped it to number 4. 4 for me to frame selected. No matter where you are in the 3D viewport, you'll still frame your selected item by pressing the number 4 for me. And the default is numpad period key. I had to change that in my preferences. If you go into your edit preferences under key map, you get to search up pretty much every operation, but either by the key binding or by the name of the operation. You can pretty much bind anything to anything. Most of your hotkeys are pretty easy to remember and quite useful. I don't normally touch them. I only rebind a few here and there. So what I did was I searched up the numpad period key on here, and for me this is number 4. And if you want to rebind this, go ahead and click your numpad period key and it will show what other operations are linked to that action. So in 3D view, that action is frame selected right over here. And you also want to mirror the same function in your outliner, which you also need to change your show active in the outliner to be the same key. That basically just shows the same object in your outliner. Let's say I selected this circle in the background and I hover my mouse over my outliner. This is all your objects that you ever created in this viewport. And if you hit number 4, it'll show you this is sphere number 0.025. One other thing that you need to be aware of if you do remap some of these keys is that you may run into some conflicts. So in my case, hide other collections was messing up how Blender registers that shortcut key. So if I have this selected, I won't be able to hone in on that object. No matter how many times I press, you see I'm pressing that so many times, but you have to pretty much deactivate that for you to use this hotkey. And I don't even use hide other collections anyway. I usually hide collections by organizing stuff into collections and then clicking on the eyeball icon to hide that collection or any object in that collection. So let me show you how that's done. If you want these objects into a collection, you just drag and click box select, your top right corner, you get pretty much, tweak box select if that's not already on there. So box select, M for collection. You can either add it to a current collection or you can create a new collection, call it C2. And now if you look at that, here's all the objects inside of C2 collection. Click on the eyeball icon to hide all the objects. Click on it again to show it. You can collapse everything in this collection with this little arrow, and there you have it. And if you want the rest of this to go into a different collection, of course, just M for collection, C3. Let's create that. Let's hide everything. So we have collection 3 and collection 2. And if you want both of them at the same time, you click on both of them. You can also change objects from one collection to the other collection. Let's say I wanted, let's say like this portion of the objects to go back to the second collection. I just go M, C2, and that's part of C2, and the rest is part of C3. And obviously, if you have an empty collection folder like this one above, you can simply just delete that, hit the delete button, or you can right click and delete. That's pretty much it. That's how you organize objects into collections and how you frame selected objects. No matter where you are in your viewport, you'll rotate around that object once you select it. And that's pretty much it for adding objects, adding primitives, and everything else in between. One other thing I like to point out is you can resize your windows any way you can. So you're not locked into one configuration. Anything can be anything else in Blender. This is the 3D viewport, right? But if you want this to be your image editor, you can let it be your image editor. If you wanted this to be your shade editor, you can be your shading editor. And if you want to, let's say, duplicate a window, you hover your mouse to either corners of this. So you can drag out a new window here, you can drag out a new window here. Just make sure the cross icon shows up. It looks like a little crosshair, and once you drag it, it'll create a new window. And to close that, you just right click on the fault line where two arrows appear, right? So you can join down to collapse that. You can join down again to collapse that again. And let's say you want this one to be the 3D viewport. That one can be the 3D viewport. And you can get it back to properties again, if that's what you feel like. And you can pretty much split this window any way you can. So this is just to show, hey, you can have one window looking at everything while you manipulate, let's say, like you're sizing up other objects, like you're looking at things from a different perspective in a different window. But I usually do this on a separate monitor. So yeah, you can have a few different options. So just to show you that the Blender viewport is quite modular, and you can switch things around if you choose to. I believe this is a good chunk of knowledge for people who are starting out. So with everything that we've learned so far, why don't we create a simple scene, just a simple block out of everything, right? Okay, let's just clear that. Why don't we make a table with our basic transformations. So we just added a cube, Shift A. We can scale it where it looks like a table. We can move it up. And we can take this cube, let's say we can duplicate it. And then we can scale it along the Y and the X axis. And now we can scale it on the Z axis only. That's one of the legs for the table. We're not looking for precision here. We're just looking for a general block out to show the spirit. You know what I mean? And of course, once we have that, we can just duplicate this leg along the X axis, Shift D, X. We can select these two legs, Shift D, Y. Now we have kind of a table. And for a chair, we can select all of this. We can duplicate this along the Y axis, maybe scale it down a little bit. I want to make sure it lines up with the floor, so I'm pivoting with my middle mouse button, Alt to snap the view to orthographic view, whichever direction that we're facing. And for the seat of the chair, I can duplicate this plane and sort of just rotate that and move this upwards a little bit. And I'm going to scale this to the X-axis and scale this to the Z-axis to make it a little thicker. And you know what? I think the legs are a bit too skinny, so I'm just going to scale this via their individual origins. So they're scaling, instead of scaling them together, we're scaling them individually around their origin points. That's something I like to cover later on. If you see the orange dot in the middle of each object, that's the origin point. And when you're rotating something, it'll rotate around that point. So we have a table, we have a chair, and let's just start with that, and maybe you can make a floor. And make a box on that table. And maybe make a smaller box next to that. So let's start with something small like this. So that's the challenge. If you're completely new to Blender, just try making a table and a chair and 2 boxes on the table with everything we've learned in episode 1 and episode 2. If you want to take this further, why don't you organize this scene a little more? So we're going to select all these objects and put this in the table collection. Hide it. And we can select all these objects and put them in the chair collection. And I'm going to hide it. And we can put this in the floor collection. And then we can put this in the props collection. And eventually, when we make bigger scenes, you'll just have a better way to organize your objects. And obviously all of these we can. If you want to get rid of all this, you can either right-click, select. Let's see, select objects. Simply delete them. And also delete this collection. And you can select everything in this collection. Delete them. And you can delete that collection if you don't want it. And there you go. So this is level 1, making a simple table and a chair. And next episode, we'll talk about something a little more exciting, like going into your objects and making manual changes, like your big insets, your big extrudes, your bevels, and your loop cuts. So just basic modeling tools that I like to go over. Stay tuned.